Okay, so get this right. Back in 2010, imagine craving pizza. You're online, about to order a couple of pies, and you end up paying, get this, 10,000 bitcoins.
Yeah, who would have thought, right?
Sounds crazy expensive for a couple of pizzas, don't you think?
Totally.
Well, believe it or not, that's exactly what happened. A programmer, Laszlo Hanyecz, actually did that, and the kicker, those bitcoins today, we're talking a
That's
fortune.
mind-blowing. That one pizza order, it's like a snapshot of Bitcoin's whole wild ride.
Exactly. It's like, how did we go from paying for pizza with Bitcoin to, like, talking about it potentially changing global finance? That's what we're going to unpack today.
It really makes you think about how fast things change, especially with something as new and complex as Bitcoin.
Right. Like, where do you even start?
Well, to really understand Bitcoin, I think we have to take a step back, way back, actually.
Okay, how far back are we talking?
Think ancient Sumerians, trading goods and services, bartering. That's our starting point.
Okay, so bartering, that's like trading a cow for, I don't know, a cart full of grain or something.
Exactly. You got it. But then societies get more complex. Things need to evolve. And that's where commodity money comes in.
Okay, so what's commodity money? Give us an example.
Think of the Roman aureus, that gold coin. Its value was directly tied to how much gold it actually contained.
So the coin itself was valuable because of the material it was made of.
Precisely. But even gold has its limitations, right? It's heavy, not always practical to carry around. Enter fiat currency, which is basically what we use today, the Roman denarius, for example.
So instead of being tied to gold, its value was set by...
The government, not based on any physical commodity. And that's a key difference.
Okay, I'm following you. So we've gone from bartering to gold, then to government-backed money, and this is where Bitcoin comes in and shakes everything up.
It's like a digital earthquake. Bitcoin enters the scene, and suddenly centuries of established financial systems are being challenged.
Because with Bitcoin, there's no central bank, no government calling the shots, right?
Exactly. It's completely decentralized. It operates outside those traditional power structures, and it's built on this concept of energy money.
Okay, we'll definitely have to dig into that energy money thing more. It's a lot to get your head around.
It really is. What I find fascinating is how it forces us to rethink our whole understanding of how money works.
Yeah.
No government control, no physical assets backing it up. It's a completely different beast.
And it's creating some pretty wild stories along the way, right? Like, remember the Winklevoss twins?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they put their money where their mouth was, right? Invested $11 million in Bitcoin.
Back when it was practically unheard of, they were taking a huge risk.
And now, that investment, it's worth over $1 billion.
Talk about a return. It's a testament to their foresight.
They saw something in Bitcoin. Even back then, it wasn't just luck, right?
No, not at all. They understood the potential of the technology behind Bitcoin blockchain. And they were smart about it, too. They engaged with regulators, tried to shape the system as it was developing. They were active participants, not passive investors.
That's so interesting. So they weren't just hoping for the best. They were diving headfirst into this new world, figuring out the tech, and even trying to make sure it worked with the existing systems. But now, let's get into how Bitcoin actually works. What makes this thing tick?
Okay, so we've talked about Bitcoin's wild ride and how it kind of came out of nowhere. But how does it actually work? What's going on behind the scenes?
Well, imagine this, right? A giant puzzle competition, like global scale.
Okay, that sounds kind of random. How does that relate to Bitcoin?
That's essentially what Bitcoin mining is, this massive competition. Thousands of super powerful computers all around the world, they're racing to solve incredibly complex math problems.
And what happens when one of them solves a problem? The winner gets to add a new block of transactions to the blockchain. You can think of the blockchain like a public ledger, a record of every single Bitcoin transaction ever made.
Okay, so it's like a giant digital logbook.
Exactly. And for their efforts, the winner gets rewarded with newly created Bitcoin. This whole system, it's called proof of work.
Proof of work. So by proving they did the work to solve the problem, they get rewarded with Bitcoin.
You got it. It's actually pretty ingenious when you think about it. But there's a catch.
What's that?
All those computers running 24/7, crunching numbers. It takes a ton of electricity, like a mind-boggling amount.
So Bitcoin's energy consumption, that's the elephant in the room?
You could say that. Some estimates say it uses as much electricity as entire countries. This has sparked a huge debate about Bitcoin's environmental impact.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's like a double-edged sword. On one hand, you've got this revolutionary technology, but on the other, there are concerns about sustainability, about its contribution to climate change. How do people even begin to reconcile those two things?
It's a complex issue, with strong arguments on both sides. Critics will argue that this level of energy consumption just isn't sustainable in the long run, especially with concerns about climate change. They say it kind of undermines the whole idea of a decentralized financial system if it comes at the cost to the planet.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about the other side? How do proponents of Bitcoin defend its energy usage?
Well, they argue that the benefits outweigh the costs. They say that the Bitcoin network's security and reliability are worth the energy it takes to maintain. And they often point out that traditional financial systems, like banks and credit card companies, they use a lot of energy too when you factor in all their operations.
So it's not like those systems are squeaky clean when it comes to energy consumption either.
Exactly. And proponents also argue that as technology advances, Bitcoin mining will become more efficient.
So, what are some potential solutions being explored? Is there any way to make Bitcoin more environmentally friendly?
There's a big push toward green mining, basically using renewable energy sources like solar and wind power to run those mining operations.
So, instead of relying on fossil fuels, use cleaner energy sources. If that makes sense.
Right. And there are ongoing efforts to design more energy-efficient hardware and algorithms too.
So, basically, trying to make the whole mining process less energy intensive from the ground up.
Exactly. And there's another fascinating idea being explored, changing the way Bitcoin transactions are validated altogether.
Okay, how would that work?
It's called proof of stake, and it's actually what Ethereum, the second largest cryptocurrency, uses.
So, instead of miners using all that energy to solve puzzles, what happens in proof of stake?
Instead of miners, you have validators. These are people who basically put up some of their own cryptocurrency as collateral, kind of like a security deposit.
Okay, and what do they get in return for doing that?
They get a chance to be chosen to validate transactions and add blocks to the blockchain. And the more cryptocurrency they stake, the better their chances of being chosen.
And this uses significantly less energy than proof of work.
Way less. It's much more efficient. So while proof of work has its drawbacks, there's a lot of innovation happening to address those environmental concerns.
That's good to hear. It sounds like people are exploring different approaches to make Bitcoin more sustainable. But what about Bitcoin itself? What makes it so attractive to people in the first place? So, we've talked about the energy debate, but let's be honest. There are some appealing aspects to Bitcoin, right? What are the upsides that draw people in?
Well, for many, it boils down to one word: decentralization. Think about it, Bitcoin operates completely independently of any government or financial institution.
So, it's like taking your financial future into your own hands.
Exactly. It's about control. If you're worried about inflation eating away at your savings or you're concerned about governments having too much power over your money, Bitcoin offers an alternative.
It's like a safety net.
In a way, yes, especially in countries experiencing hyperinflation. People have turned to Bitcoin to protect their purchasing power when their local currencies become almost meaningless. It's remarkable.
Wow, that's a powerful example. It sounds like Bitcoin can be a lifeline in situations where traditional financial systems are failing, but it's also attractive to investors, right? What's the appeal for them?
Scarcity is a big one.
Yeah.
Unlike traditional currencies, which can be printed endlessly, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins in existence.
So, limited supply.
Exactly. Basic economics tells us that limited supply, combined with rising demand, well, it drives up value.
So that's why people compare Bitcoin to digital gold.
You got it. They're both seen as hedges against inflation and economic uncertainty. Just like people have used gold as a safe haven asset for centuries, Bitcoin is emerging as a digital counterpart.
It's interesting how Bitcoin mirrors historical patterns, even though it's a completely digital asset. And we've seen some interesting examples of it being adopted in the real world too, right? Like El Salvador making it legal tender.
Exactly. That was a huge milestone for Bitcoin. And major companies, like Square, are now accepting Bitcoin payments. These are signs of growing mainstream acceptance.
It's even spawned a bunch of new financial products, like Bitcoin ETFs. Those are investment funds that track the price of Bitcoin, making it easier for everyday investors to get in on the action. It's come a long way from those early days of pizza payments.
It really has. But it hasn't been all smooth sailing. There are challenges too. Governments and central banks around the world are trying to figure out how to regulate this new decentralized force in the financial world.
Because it does kind of challenge their authority, doesn't it?
Right. Some see it as a threat to their control over monetary policy. That's why some countries are even exploring their own digital currencies controlled by their central banks.
It's like a tug of war for the future of money, decentralized versus centralized systems. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into Bitcoin, what are the key takeaways? What do you hope our listeners walk away thinking about?
Bitcoin's journey has been nothing short of extraordinary. It's challenged our fundamental ideas about money, ignited important conversations about energy consumption, regulation, even the future of finance. Love it or hate it, Bitcoin is a force to be reckoned with.
It certainly made us think differently about the role of technology in our lives. And with that, it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've explored the history of money, the intricacies of blockchain, and the potential for a financial revolution. We hope you've enjoyed the journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.